Hi, it's Heather Joy with Perfectly Curated Life. Thank you for joining me. Well, here we are. It's Friday the 13th of November, and in less than 2 weeks we will be at Thanksgiving. And for many of us, it's going to be a limited, small, only the folks in your house Thanksgiving. So as we're reimagining what this particular family gathering should look like, I think we may too want to look at what some non-traditional food items might be for Thanksgiving, and that's what I'm going to focus on this weekend. Now, I will be doing some cranberry sauce and maybe one or two other sort of traditional Thanksgiving foodstuffs over the next 2 weeks, so don't worry, we'll have those. But I also want us to consider some things that are nice, that will elevate the dinner that we're going to have just with the members of our immediate households in order to protect ourselves from contracting coronavirus. So with that said, the first thing we're going to do is a high heat beef roast. And the key to this is getting your oven up to 500 degrees to start, letting the meat cook in the oven for just about 5 to 10 minutes, 5 minutes for 1 pound, 10 minutes for 2 pounds, so on and so forth, and then turning off the heat completely and letting the meat stay in that oven, that hot oven, as it begins to cool for 2 hours. But before we do that, we're going to just sear our meat on the stove top, add in some aromatics and some veggies, and then we'll put it into this oven. So to start with, I have my meat. I pierced this roast and put little bits of garlic in it, seasoned it up on the outside, and that's been sitting in my refrigerator for a day and a half now. So I'm just going to open this up and take that meat out. And here I have some flour, which I've just seasoned very lightly with salt and pepper. So before I dredge the meat in the flour, let's get the cooktop started. I want to add in a little bit of vegetable oil, just enough to cover the bottom to give the meat something to brown in. And then, okay, there we go. A little slow today, isn't it? So while that's heating up, and before we dredge the meat, let's look at the other things that we're going to put in. So I have some white button mushrooms that I've quartered, a half an onion, and about 4 cloves of garlic. And I also, as I mentioned, have the garlic that's actually inside of the meat. 1 small green pepper, sliced, a julienne, some red wine, some tomato paste. We're going to use a few teaspoons of this to thicken up the sauce. And then, of course, our meat and the flour. So I'm going to start by taking out the meat. And I vacuum seal this to really make sure that the flavors would fully absorb. So I'm just going to take this and place it in the flour mixture, and then just kind of spoon the flour mixture over the meat. It doesn't have to be perfectly even. This just helps to, number one, helps the meat to brown, and then number two, it's also going to help thicken up that gravy that will form in the pan as the oven is cooling down. All right, so this is pretty straightforward. This whole process is very, very, very limited with the level of time that you need to do it. You're basically just frying up the meat and browning it on 2 sides, and then you're forgetting about it for a couple of hours. So one of the things you're gonna see a lot of me this weekend, because this is really my favorite time of year. I love the autumn. For me, the holidays really start at Halloween and then end on Valentine's Day. So we got a lot of holidays coming up between us. And I love this time of year, and it always gives me really warm memories of being back home in Detroit, Michigan, and visiting my family there, and being with my parents in Southfield where I grew up. And now that I'm in Georgia, we still have lots of family visits, but one of the things that this time of year reminds me of just as much as food and everything else is just music, like good R&B music. I feel like if I don't hear Luther, then it really ain't the holidays. If you don't have that like James Ingram, then it's not the holidays. But as we know, this is a non-traditional small holiday season, And so this year, instead of listening to so many of those old school R&B artists, I really want to get into some of the newer R&B artists that I don't feel get sufficient shine, like Miguel and Neo. They both put out rather a really impressive catalog over the years, and they do have some hits that a lot of people know, but not nearly as many as their talent probably merits. Let's see. Okay, that's getting hot enough. So before we get back to the music, this is a pretty sturdy Dutch oven, and this is perfect for this kind of dish because you can take it straight from the cooktop and put it into the oven. So we won't have to transfer this. So before we get back to Miguel and my perception rather that he's not getting as much shine as he should, let's make sure that we have this meat kind of covered on all sides with the flour that's fully dredged. And then I'm just gonna place this in, and you'll hear the sizzle. And you just wanna let that sit undisturbed for 3 minutes to start. I want you to check it. You don't want for it to burn, but you definitely want it to have a nice brown crust forming. And then once it's seared on the first side, we're just gonna flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. So we're gonna let this sit for a couple minutes. I'll come back with a little Miguel and we'll go from there. See you in a few. Okay, so the meat is nice and brown, as you can see. The aim is just to brown it, not to cook it all the way through. So I have my little pot here, it's emptied. I'm going to add in a couple of tablespoons of butter. Okay, and as soon as that starts to melt, I'm gonna put in my garlic and onions. I really wanna give these a good stir. I do not want these to brown. I just want them to start to cook down a little bit. And as soon as they do, I'm going to add in the other vegetables. So what you hear in the background is Skywalker, which is a song with Miguel and Travis Scott. And I first saw Miguel in 2012 or so. I had gone with one of my friends to see Usher in Miami for New Year's Eve, and Miguel opened up for Usher. And he's a tiny little thing, but he put on an amazing, amazing show. He just has a chill vibe. So I've been into him ever since then, but this song is just a vibe. You can mellow out to it, cook to it, it's a nice song. So we have our mushrooms, we're gonna add those in. I used to work for about a year and a half in the music industry in New York, and I had a chance to meet a lot of very interesting characters while I was there. And I actually did meet Miguel in person at a dinner one night, and this is still in Miami, and he was super chill. Like, he didn't have any of the pretentiousness or ridiculousness that you see sometimes in industry people. So this song has a little bit of a rap vibe to it too, because of Travis Scott, who is the paramour of the youngest Kardashian or Jenner girl. So Kylie is partnered with this young man. So okay, just add a little bit of salt. I also am going to season this with this spice one that I made that has like cumin and garlic and a little bit of cinnamon. Just add that in there. We're gonna get some flavor too from the wine and the tomato paste. So just wanna make sure all those flavors are well balanced. I'm gonna turn this up a little bit. So I would love to hear from you guys about what your plans are, adding in the peppers, what your plans are for the holidays, how you guys are managing this socially distant holiday season, whether you plan to buck the rules and meet with your folks, or whether it's just going to be you and your immediate family. My parents are both advanced in age, and I am staying with them for the time being, and I cannot afford to really flout any rules for their safety and for mine. So we will be here. Part of me wants to almost just do like a pizza party or make Chinese food and completely go against the grain of what we normally do this time of year, because there is something rather sad about not being able to celebrate these family holidays with our extended family. So to take us completely out of that mindset, I thought about maybe, just doing something, I don't know, making Thai food, but we'll see. But this dish is not particularly, holiday-ish. It's good, but you don't have to, it doesn't necessarily take you to the feeling of Thanksgiving like, a turkey would. So hold on one second. Let me grab another spoon. So now I'm going to add in my wine. And I would say give this a nice generous pour, maybe a cup and a half. I really want to get that wine flavor in there. And the alcohol is going to cook off. So if you're a teetotaler, you don't have to worry about this, because there's not going to be any alcohol left by the time it all burns off from the heat. And I'm just going to add in a few tablespoons of this tomato paste, and then kind of let that stir in. And we're really almost done here. I'm going to let this cook down for a few minutes, season it up a little bit, and then I'll just put that meat right on top of it, put a lid on this, and then I'm going to put it directly into the oven at 500. Let it cook for 5 minutes at 500, and then turn off that oven. So if you bear with me a minute, I'll show you what this looks like. Smells divine. So you can see that it's a little bit soupy. It's going to reduce more while it's cooking, so you may want to thin it out with a little bit of water before you put it into the oven. But that's basically it. So I'm going to put this meat back in there, right on top, okay? And then what I will do, because we're not going to open that door, that's the key. You cannot open the oven door once it goes in. So whatever flavorings and seasonings you need to have, put it in there before you shut that door. But I am going to kind of scoop some of these vegetables over the meat and add a little bit of salt and pepper. And I'll probably add a splash more wine to this. But you really want that meat to be covered with this sauce so it can absorb while it's cooking. So we are good to go for the time being. Let me show you this. So it's not going to look like much, but when you take it out, boy, will it be good. So that's the meat in there. I'm going to put the lid on, and I will be back in a few hours to show you what this looks like. This weekend, we're also going to do some desserts, like an emphasis on pies and how to make those really festive and pretty. And then I'm going to go over a recipe for homemade cranberry sauce. Now, I know that this is a hotly debated holiday issue. Like, whether you like the straight up canned kind from Ocean Spray or whatever brand you prefer, that's nice and smooth and it has that jelly texture. That, up until the last year, has been my #1 fave. Or if you prefer the chunky style, homemade, whole berry cranberry sauce. So I have come up with a solution. I make the homemade sauce, but I do strain it so it has that jelly-like consistency. And so we'll do cranberry sauce 2 ways this weekend as well. So I'll see you in a few hours, and we will have our meat together. See you soon.